Hello and welcome to Fit This Week. I'm Eugene Uba. So glad to have you with us. As one horse was pumped up on steroids at the Kentucky Derby, and some people pumped up all kinds of stuff with gasoline, many Americans are pumping their fists in excitement at the CDC guidelines calling for the removal of masks, that is, for those fully vaccinated against the novel coronavirus. With many states, including Maryland, joining in on the CDC guidance, and with 12 to 15-year-olds eligible for the Pfizer vaccine, we featured the final part of our interview with pharmacist Safiya Ransome, who debunks the misinformation that's been spreading around like a virus and lends some insight for those who may still be on the fence about getting the vaccine. And I speak with Common Sense Entertainment Creative Director Raheem Dawodu Jr. about Liz Cheney being canceled by the GOP. That is coming up in a few minutes. But first, as we approach Memorial Day weekend here in the United States, with restrictions loosening and the reduced demand for the vaccine across the country, so much so that Canadians are flying here to get it, I've been giving a lot of thought to the idea of vaccine passports. And I have to tell you that this article from the leading progressive radio host and New York Times bestselling author Tom Hartman sealed the deal for me that this has to happen. While it's unfortunate that the Biden administration won't even entertain the thought on a national level, and that a few states have preemptively banned vaccine passports, Washington, D.C. earlier this month, in announcing its reopening plans, also announced that they are allowing business owners, if they see fit, to require proof of vaccination from the public before entering their establishments. Proof of vaccination is, to me, the only path that we've got in terms of, at least while we still have these mutations going around, that really people can enjoy themselves in a safe and responsible manner, knowing that the rest of the people inside, wherever they are vaccinated. And business owners, they can actually make a lot of money, with this if they actually require proof of vaccination upon entry. Now, there are some people that will say that, oh, this infringes on their rights and everything else. But I defy anybody to find where in the US Constitution that it says that you have the right to infect other people. I'll wait. I do think that there ought to be exemptions for health or religious reasons, just like what the University of Maryland and all the other universities in the university system of Maryland are doing this upcoming fall semester. But that should be the extent of the exemptions that should happen. For right now, given the choice between, say, restaurant A with average food and drink, but requires that everybody has proof of vaccination that they are vaccinated, versus, say, restaurant B with great food and drinks, exceptional food and drinks, but allows anybody with a pulse to walk into the door, even COVID deniers, regardless of vaccination status, then I would much rather take restaurant A any day and twice on Sunday. I trust myself, but do I trust the public? Not really. Folks, until such a time that COVID actually truly subsides, all right, and we have more of the public vaccinated, that we actually reach herd immunity, and more businesses actually require proof of vaccination before entry, then guess what? I'm going to be taking a bit of a wait and see approach. We have been at this now for, nearly a year and a half? What's a few more months?
It's science, and things. The part of science is discovery, and like you mentioned with Dr. Fauci saying you don't need masks versus masks, it's because at that time we thought the transmission was droplet based, and a droplet based transmission means that okay, well, a mask can help, but if you stay sick, that's where the 6 feet away came from. Because if it's coming off of the water vapor in your breath or something like that, that will keep you far enough from somebody to keep you safe. And also at that time, there was even less PPE than we have now. And if you said, okay, well, everybody needs a mask, the fear at that time was that there was going to be a run on it and there wouldn't be enough masks for the healthcare workers. Now, the government had an option to step in and use Defense Production Act and encourage these, all our vast manufacturing structure and capacity within this country to ramp up production on that, but instead they left it to the states and let the states bid against each other and fighting and all that, like completely ignoring the actual function of the federal government. So that was another complication. But then, as the science developed, we found out, oh, it's airborne. It's actually going to stay suspended in air for, I don't know, like 15 hours or something like that, I think was the time frame they expected to stay around. And if you know anything about aerosols, you take a hairspray can and spray it. You'll be on one side of the room, and then you go to the next side of the room, you can still smell it. That's how air freshener works, right? So, so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that's suspended in air, that can stay suspended in air for a period of time. And it took time to figure that out. So people, on the one hand, well, when there's like the distrust in science comes from scientists not having the right answer immediately, but not having the right answer immediately and continuing to explore it is actually what should give you confidence in science, because this is a field of study which depends on you being able to stand up and say, I was wrong. Now the evidence says this, and this is what we should do in response to that. And I think that's like what Dr. Fauci was trying to do in his position, earlier on. He wanted to be able to say, this is the evidence we have now, and this is what we should do in respect of that. And he said it very candidly himself after Biden's inauguration, that he was so happy to be able to stand in front of the people of the United States and say, this is what I know, and this is what we should do. Whereas the previous administration didn't want him to say, I don't have an answer for this, or this is different, or things are changing. So, again, the information ecosystem that we live in is so subject to being poisoned. And when you have government officials, whether it's federal, state, or local, that don't yield to the science or yield to the ever-changing nature of information, then that is going to further, just disrupt people's sense of trust. And there's so much damage has been done, and it's hard to deal with.
It's so tough. It's so tough. I mean, again, when I see this kind of misinformation that has been bandied about, especially from the previous administration and what's been going on, it's frustrating because you cannot bring back the over 450, 500,000 people that have died from this virus. And nobody, and I tell a lot of people this, nobody is saying that there would have been 0 deaths from this virus had, say, Hillary Clinton been the president, but there sure as hell would not have been 400,000 or 500,000.
Exactly. If anybody, I mean, at this point, it's almost like anybody but these people, I feel, could have done a better job. Like, I was a teenager during the Bush years. I am no fan of George W. Bush, but if this happened in his time, I still feel like the actual power and capability of the federal government would have been used. And look how angry we were about how he mishandled Hurricane Katrina, which is, nowhere even in the magnitude of what we're dealing with right now. So the fact that people in this day and age are, looking at essentially like what I would consider as the crime against humanity that's been committed, and say, well, they didn't know, or it's not their fault, or that kind of thing, is so strange to me. Whereas in any time before this, it would have been a completely different response.
Exactly. It's just, again, just an absolute pity what has been going on, especially in the year that has passed since really this virus has really upended so many people's lives. The final question I have for you, Safiya, and again, thank you so much for doing this. Um, Is there anything else that our viewers should know about, again, this vaccine, how things have been going, what you have seen? And,
Mhm.
from you going across the country, um, how has that been for you at this point? Do you feel more at risk with what's been going on, or do you feel okay?
Mhm.
What should our viewers know about this in our remaining moments?
Sure. Well, one thing I would say about the vaccine and having received it, I got my second shot yesterday, and there is definitely less anxiety for me personally about moving around in the world. My mother is also scheduled to get her second shot next week, and that is an extreme relief for me. As she's an older woman, she's in the susceptible groups and things like that, and I don't know what I would do if I lost her. So I want people to think about, if not just themselves, think about the people around you and the people you want to keep around you. And I think endeavoring to make sure they get vaccinated is one way to just show how much you love and care for that person. I mean, that's all I can really say, like, on a personal note for that. But just like seeing um, the situation that we're in now, and we have a long way to go. And I want everybody to understand that we have a long way to go. The vaccine is not the last, it's not the end all be all. It's going to take time, and more people will get sick in the time that it takes to roll the vaccine out. And so you still have to be safe. You still have to mask and distance and not go to parties and, you know, don't go to the restaurants and things like that. That will continue on for a while. But I really also believe that we could come out of this um, more unified and stronger, as even within just our communities, if not the country as a whole, because I think that's going to take time, obviously. But just showing the consideration, care, and love for your neighbor, and making sure people pass and pay that on to others, pay it forward, I should say, will really make a difference. It really does lie with us. But as far as how I did want to remark also on the vaccines themselves. Um, so you mentioned, we've mentioned Pfizer and Moderna vaccines a couple times, and those are the two mRNA-based vaccines. Johnson and Johnson is also looking at or looking to get their vaccine candidate approved. That's a one-shot vaccine, and a um, it's a more traditional type of vaccine, what we call an inactivated virus. It's a virus particle that's inactivated and would, work in a more traditional vaccine way, but it is only one shot. And while you could still run the risk of getting COVID, it actually lowers the severity of the disease you contract. So it's 100% effective at keeping people out of the hospital, and like 70% effective in keeping people from getting a severe case of COVID. So there are more things coming along, and the vaccines themselves have a really impressive safety profile. They're not any worse than the vaccines that we've been giving people traditionally. um, the worst that I think some people have encountered so far is maybe like sniffles or something like that afterwards. But mind you, people are hyper aware of their symptomology after receiving a treatment. From my experience in clinical trials, you have to report everything. Like someone gets a headache or they trip and fall, that even ends up in there as well. So, sniffles and headaches and things like that have been reported. Not to minimize that, but that's normal. That's kind of thing that we expect as a vaccine response. So, you know, everybody just, be confident, do positive research from the CDC, the FDA, your local health department, your state health department. Make sure that the information that you're getting is sound. You can go directly to the websites of the pharmaceutical companies that have developed it. So Pfizer, Moderna, J&J all have write-ups and papers about their vaccines and how they work and how they've been tested. So there's a lot of information out there, and I really believe every option we have is worth confidence right now.
I think this is really, really sound advice for us to leave the program with. Safiya Ransome, oh my goodness, it has been so great to talk to you. And what I think has really been good is that I think there's a lot of hope at this juncture that hopefully, as long as people are following the rules and everything else, that hopefully we start to see possibly, potentially, however long it may be, a post-COVID world. I want you to keep on doing the good work that you're doing. We'll be talking to you definitely more in the months ahead. And Safiya Ransome, pharmacist with expertise in drug development, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It was great.
And joining me now is Raheem Dawodu Jr., the creative director of Common Sense Entertainment. Raheem, welcome to the show. It is nice to have you on. And let's go ahead and get started. All right.
Thanks, Eugene. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It is a real honor to, of course, get to you on the program to talk about this news.
Honor, that's sweet.
Absolutely. We're just feeling the love, man. We're feeling the love right here. You know, that's the way that we roll here on Common Sense Entertainment. So, with this news about Liz Cheney, I mean, this is huge in the middle part of May. I mean, ousted from her position as the House GOP conference chair. And what's been interesting is that most of the GOP recently, and frankly over the past several years, have been telling anyone willing to listen about cancel culture. I mean, we have seen this everywhere, especially when you talk about Gina Carano, the MLB, Coke, Mr. Potato Head, and then of course censorship of conservative ideas among on the college campuses. But then when somebody from their own party has the temerity to speak their mind, it's like, oh, we can't have that. Oh my goodness, we cannot have that. So I guess, what do you see here, Raheem? Is Cheney now, Liz Cheney that is she the victim of cancel culture?
I would say yes. It's a really, really weird thing in that party, because that party has now become the Trump party. Even though he lost the election, they've turned all their resources to Donald Trump and trying to boost him up. It's bizarre because again, he lost the election. He was an historically unpopular president, and in normal terms, in normal post presidential elections, the person that's lost is usually kind of like exiled, so to speak. And to an extent, he has been, in terms of like not being able to do social media. So he has like his blog, I guess, that no one's like on, and he's done a bunch of interviews and had like speeches and stuff and rallies that no one covers anymore, because he can't use the megaphone of Twitter to blast his ideals out. So it's actually kind of interesting that they're still catering their party towards him. In the case of Liz Cheney, it's just a continuation of that. Jeff Flake was like one of the first ones, so he spoke out against President Trump, and Trump spent his entire rest of his like political power and party's power to like kind of get rid of him, and so he didn't even run for re-election in 2020. He that happened to him. There's a few other political senators and congresspeople that they spoke out against Trump before the 2020 election and had to step aside because just because the party in essence canceled them. And so Liz Cheney's situation is very, very interesting because she comes from a powerful, family. Dick Cheney, I've seen that analogy of him kind of being referred to as Darth Vader, if you're a Star Wars head, because he kind of, he was secondary president under President Bush for 8 years, and a lot, and even before that, he was a defense secretary, and before that, he was like a very prominent congressperson. And you know, he was like a very major person in the Republican Party for so many years. And his daughter runs for the House in his home state and wins and is successful, and she's climbing up the ladder as well. And you're thinking like, all right, she might eventually become like Speaker of the House or something. And Donald Trump now is like, no, we can't have that. You're done. Lisa Murkowski is another one who, is going to have some troubles, issues as well. She voted for Trump's impeachment, I believe, as well. Mitt Romney is another one that wasn't for, he was elected in 2018. And if it wasn't for, him and that family name being strong in Utah, like he'd probably be having problems as well. But Trump's turned his ire towards these people. Now, going back to the question about cancel culture, that's just the way that party is. They've been canceling people forever. Even before the term cancel culture even existing or cancellations, which again came from Black Twitter community and social media community. That's what that party did. They canceled French fries, if you remember, after 9/11. When you consider that, like that's just in their DNA. They just rail against it because what they want is their ideals to only be in the forefront of no one else, which is in essence cancellations. I mean, even now, there's a movement around the country to like not teach the 1619 project that the New York Times ran a couple of years ago to kind of commemorate and remember and discuss the history of like the first slaves reaching the United States shores in 1619. And Donald Trump had a commission against it and had like the 17th, I think it's called the 1776 Commission. A lot of like senators and Congress people are like, we can't, Tom Cotton recently was like, yeah, it's all, we don't want to teach people this stuff because it's an alternative history of America when it's the true history of America or a history of America that they don't want to discuss. And they're working really hard to force schools or school districts around the country to not teach like history of slavery. So it's part and parcel of the GOP. That's what they do. They cancel. They love canceling stuff. They just don't want to call it that because it came from Black social media and stuff. But that's what they've done since the founding of this nation. That ideology has done that since the founding of this nation.
So, Raheem, what's been interesting now in terms of Cheney is that the Democrats, a lot of people in the Democratic Party have now put Cheney up on a pedestal. And this is even with her problematic views on a number of issues. I mean, she supported the Iraq War. She was against bringing home troops from Afghanistan. She voted with the previous president 93% of the time, even more than her replacement, Elise Stefanik of New York. And she supported the birtherism. She defended birtherism as it pertained to President Obama. I'm kind of reminded of the saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That saying when it comes to the embrace of many of the Democrats of Liz Cheney. So, and you know that she's going to be running next year in the midterm elections for her seat in Wyoming. So the question is, can she effectively be the anti-big lie candidate, the anti-Trump voice now, when she herself really, through some of her policies that I've just enumerated, she kind of planted the seeds for some of this stuff that has happened over the past few years.
It's there's a weird thing with Democrats on Capitol Hill and liberal media discourse in general. It's very bizarre where they're always looking for the good Republican, always. And it only takes one thing, like one decision for them to do that. So you mentioned Mitt Romney. All of last year he was kind of like the good Republican because I think in the first impeachment, I think he was one of those that voted for Trump's impeachment. Mitt Romney, who ran against President Obama, who's like everything that you kind of like look at in modern America, a hedge fund person that funds corporate takeovers and destroys companies and takes away jobs. He was ran to as the good Republican, and you can count on him. I remember because Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, like you mentioned prior, when they voted with John McCain and John McCain as well, before he passed away, when they voted for to keep the Affordable Care Act in 2018, or 2017. I'm sorry, these years are all blurred now, but 2017. They were held as good people that you can kind of rely on. And then it's like, wait a minute, y'all sided these bad people for everything else because they did this one okay thing. These people are now championed as like heroes, and we should always like seek them for whatever. And they're like the censor when they're really not at all in any way, shape, or form. And so you bring it back down to Liz Cheney, and like you mentioned her record. Like she's not at all like in line with like most Democratic things. She's not anywhere close to that. But because she's against Trump, and there is like a cottage industry of like never Trumpers and all that stuff. And I think the Lincoln Project last year showed that when you have like these people, when you focus your gaze on one person as like the enemy, anybody that could come in and say like, oh yeah, I'm with that too. I don't support anything else, but I'm with that too. For some reason, like Democrats and liberal media loves to jump on them and show them as like, yeah, this is a good one. Let's like give them more stuff. Like Lincoln Project last year, for instance, they ran ads because they were against Trump, and took millions and millions of dollars, and it's been shown that they had like no effect on the campaign last year. But these people enriched themselves and got rich and were able to cross over into liberal mediasville, even though these were people that brought us the Iraq War, said that had a whole entire campaign in 2004 against gay marriage and so forth. These are people that they're bringing on, that they're bringing onto like your favorite evening MSNBC talk show. It's despicable, man. Like I can't even like wrap my head around it that people were calling her a hero for standing up at the end of Trump's presidency. Because remember this as well, he voted for Trump's impeachment after he lost the election. You know what I mean? And after he was not lost election, actually after he was after his term was over. So there was no real like power dynamic thing here. It was just like, yeah, his term is over. He's already out of office. Okay, now I'm going to vote for his impeachment and all this stuff. Even though she didn't vote for the first impeachment of Trump, when he did a lot more overt, clear-cut grosser things with the Ukraine dealings. So yeah, I don't know, man. There's this weird dynamic of like we have to be bipartisan and show that we have friends on this side, because it's important to show that when the other side is rabid and irrational and not really like at all in agreement with your values. It's bizarre. I don't really understand why that is. Liz Cheney will not vote for any Democratic legislation. Even now, she didn't vote for the first reconciliation, like the first Biden bill for the stimulus package, $1.9 trillion package that he had passed like in early March. Like she didn't vote for that at all, and she was like staunchly against that. Not a single Republican voted for that. And this is after knowing that Liz Cheney was in trouble with her position in the GOP. She still didn't vote for it because she doesn't agree with this stuff. So this weird, specifically liberal thing of like, oh, they're a good person, let's pat them on the back because we agree on this is beyond me. I don't really get it, and it's not. I wouldn't even say it's the enemy. I mean, it is literally like the enemy. Enemy's my friend, and what you're describing it as. But really, man, like I just think it's some weird, just some weird like thing to show that people agree with me, but not on anything substantial, just on that we don't like Donald Trump. That's what it kind of comes down to me, and it's strange. I don't get it. I'll never get it. So yeah, I don't really know how else to answer it except to say that.
With what has been going on, especially with Cheney, but then let's take all of the other developments as well that have been going on. Has the term cancel culture lost its meaning, and has the GOP really dug its own grave here at this point?
Well, let's look at the term cancel culture. Who is being canceled? We had this conversation a few months ago. We said cancel culture, and I'm like, well, who's actually being canceled? People that are in power are not being canceled. So if you're a powerful man, odds are you're not going to be canceled. There are exceptions here and there. You can say like you know, Harvey Weinstein probably like is the best example of it, but you know, there are others as well that you can kind of like point to. But for the most part, like you know, even now, like Governor Cuomo in New York, he had his oil spill happening, and he's still governor of New York, and no one cares. You know what I mean? Or these are Democrats. I'm going to mention Democrats just to show that I'm even-handed here. In Virginia, you had
Northam.
Yeah, Ralph Northam. Thank you. You know, he had the blackface photos resurface, and it's a scandal. Let's cancel him. And he was like, no, I'm going to continue being governor of Virginia. You're not going to stop me. And he's continued onward. So I think what you've seen is that Donald Trump has kind of like showed the blueprint for, at least for white men, how to navigate these waters whenever these things happen, and by just saying, no, I don't really care, and I'm going to continue moving onward. And I think you've seen the others kind of like follow suit with that. To go in these instances, though, I don't think that I think that cancel culture is still, I think the real power of cancel culture, if you want to be like honest, is by like attacking like corporations and saying like, we're not going to buy your product anymore. Actually like boycotting and having like organized like boycotts and stuff. Excuse me, where you attack corporations in their pocketbooks, or you attack like municipalities in their pocketbooks. That's like true cancellation. If you are saying on social media that you're canceled, I'm sorry, that doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't do anything. And the GOP, like you said before, they've tried for years to cancel like French fries, and I'm still eating French fries today, and I think you are as well. Most people are, because who cares? Like whatever. So there's stuff with like Mr. Potato, the Potato Head, and like getting upset at the Seuss estate for, you know, pointing out that his books were pretty racist and kind of like problematic. So let's like acknowledge that. No one cares. Like people kind of like just saw it and was like, yeah, whatever. Who cares? Move on, whatever. And they didn't care because they didn't really like take it to bat like that. The real stuff that you're going to see that's like really being canceled, like you mentioned, people not being able to vote anymore. That's the problem. That's an issue. That's like a real serious thing. They've been pushing legislation around the country and most states that are GOP controlled to limit people from voting. I think Arizona just passed theirs a couple of days ago, and they're doing a recount right now again for some reason for the presidential election. So you know, that's to me the real cancellation, is people losing their political power. Liz Cheney, you know, she may have lost her esteem as a GOP leader in the House, but she hasn't been impeached from the House. She's still going to be able to vote, and they're still going to be relying on her for votes and stuff like that. And if like the GOP wins the House next year, she'll probably vote for the Speaker of the House and not have a problem with that. So, you know, man, like there was power in saying that originally, like a long time ago, and if it was better focused on things that actually like kind of like mattered and was like really serious, I would be more like, let's, you know, cancel culture is still here, but it's never really been like that serious to me, because only people I've ever seen canceled are like people that are that have like melanin in their skin. Most people are able to like kind of move on. If you're powerful and white, especially, like you're able to kind of like move on and continue on with like your story and stuff, and no one can really check you and forget about it. So yeah, I just don't think that I think it's unfortunately like been down for a while, but yeah, unless you're like doing stuff like this with the GOP or the Cheney, there really isn't any like, people don't get canceled. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, and I hope, by the way, that French fries will never be canceled again. I definitely do, yes, enjoy my French fries. Although I'm trying to, you know, it's summer, you know, coming up
Summer,
very
man.
soon. So hey, you know, gotta keep it, you know, gotta be careful always,
Season,
you know. But Raheem, I'll tell you, this has been a very good conversation, and we're going to continue to keep an eye on these developments. So, Raheem Dawodu Jr., the creative director of Common Sense Entertainment, thank you so much for joining me today.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having me. And yeah, just keep eating your French fries. You know, or if you want to eat like you know, sweet potato fries or whatever, just keep eating it. Don't let these people like tell you it's over. So
Absolutely. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No problem, man. Cheers.
Crinkle fries, waffle fries, straight cut fries, Any kind of fries. Curly fries. Pick your pleasure. Always, always, always good. And another thing that's going to be good is that next month, we are going to interview Maximilian Spoor. He is the founder of the Golden Sneakers Hip Hop Film Festival, and he is going to provide international perspective from us from Germany as he talks about some of the developments that have been going on in George Floyd's murder and the impending sentencing of Derek Chauvin. Here's a sneak peek.
Like a lot of people, if you talk to them about police brutality, they're like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, that's exactly the point, right? Like, if we all say that, nothing ever is going to change. Nothing.
Yeah, and you know, we talk. You know, there's a saying that goes that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That episode is going to drop on June 24th. So I want all of you watching this program, especially those of you who are watching this program in Germany, to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you are the first to see the episode when it drops. So I hope you'll be able to join us. And thank you so much for watching. Listen, there's going to be a lot more where that came from, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content that you'll see from today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And until next time, I'm Eugene Nova, and remember, we will not be silenced.